Yo, it's your friend Dinner Dog. We're doing a bounty hunter tournament, so it's a great time to talk about strategy. So whether you're just watching or you're participating, that you can consider this like your strategy starter pack. And I say that because we haven't really competitively ran this preset a lot in the past. So I expect that the meta will continue to develop as the tournament goes on. And of course, if you've got suggestions or things, hit them up in the comments and such. But and we'll pin them, and we can I'll probably look to remake this video at the end just so that it's a more wholesome view since we've played more games and such. But let's get into it here. So we're going to talk about the opening library card, enemy diversity and how it impacts routing, stuff about save splits, how relics stack up with each other in this unique preset. We're going to quickly talk about doing Silver Ring out of logic with no iFrame items, because items are very scarce in this preset. And then equipment and game state, which I think is one of the most important things in here. Now, I'm not going to talk about individual enemy farms, because that's its own video. And, smash the like button if you want me to do all 104 individual enemies, because, you don't tempt me with a good time, right? Or don't threaten me with a good time. Okay, so you absolutely need to get the opening library card. You get it for getting 41 hearts in the prologue. You must get that, all right? You will more than likely lose if you don't get it, and you're more than likely going to lose if you don't use it very quickly. So I think there's three strategies that you could use. I think two of them are viable and one isn't, and then not using any strategies I think is a lesson for failure. So the first one is just you're at the beginning of the seed. You've got a control of Alucard. You go into your menu and you just library card immediately. Like, look at this density here. You warp, you've got a relic here from the librarian, which is free. You're not worried about missing out on other items because there are none, so like money doesn't matter, the librarian isn't selling anything. You go through the library, you grab another relic, that's amazing. You go out of the library, you grab another relic, you get a warp, you can either keep going, you could warp back to the entrance, and look, another relic here, right? We're just giving them away, right? We're just giving those relics away. So it's very, very cool. And even without the teleporter, there's like a 60% chance here, assuming that there's only one progression relic on the first level, that you've got the thing you need, and then you can just keep going on, right? Maybe to the key, maybe down to the caverns, all sorts of places. Maybe you warp back and now you've got library or gravity boots and you're going through the lab. It's very good. I think it's probably going to be the most popular option. Because it's very simple and straightforward. The other strategy, which I like, and it's the one I've been using so far, although I kind of feel like most people are going to do the library card immediately, is to card at Cube of Zoe. So the pain is felt immediately, right? You've got to go through this beginning area of the castle. That's not fun, right? But the benefit is, first of all, you get the 2 guaranteed drops from the scimitar skeletons, which is really cool. They might drop empty hands. My understanding is that happens because they were programmed to drop like food, which isn't allowed to drop, or like a gem or something like that. So you might come up short, but you could also get like some really cool stuff here, right? Like I got a weapon with a special the other day, and that helped me to farm enemies, and I may not have gotten that if I didn't grab these guys over here at the beginning. Items are very scarce, and being able to have a good chance for 2 of them immediately is very trivial. It also increases your odds of being able to check fairy card when you go to the library. And if you think about it, the library from a routing perspective is a bit of a dead end, right? And there's a large likelihood that we'll have to come back to the library. And assuming that, like, let's say you have to, assuming that like Leapstone is early in the game, you only have a 40% chance to get it while you're within the library. Kind of hurts if you get it from the outside and stuff like that, but like that's going to hurt no matter what. So by going to Cube of Zoe and get an extra relic before you library card, you increase the chance to get an additional check while you're in the library. And it'll also give you a bit more confidence once you leave, right? Like, because you're less likely to, you're going to know that you've got some form of progression, and you can be fairly confident that you can follow it, or you hard know that you need to go to Fairy or to Spirit over here. So it is pretty good information. So I personally like this, and like even if you're not, it gives you the opportunity to even not card. Like if you get Gravity Boots or Bat at Cube of Zoe, you can just continue going through the lab and save that library card for later. And you'll be good to go there. So I think carding at Cube of Zoe has good merit and something to consider, even though I think library card immediately will probably gain the most traction. Lastly, you can card at Spirit Orb, which I absolutely don't recommend. Like old school runners will be very familiar with this because it's, you know, in other presets. Let's say you're going through and you get like a library card drop somewhere in the lab, then library carding at Spirit Orb here is very, very good. You avoid all this section of the castle, you avoid a boss fight, and there's nothing value added here, right? There's no like teleporters to grab on the way or really cool things. The you're just burning time and fighting extra bosses. So, and then having to both enter the library and then leave the library, which is another lost tempo to your competitors. So I don't recommend it. I think it could work as an off strategy if you're saying, hey, you know what, I don't think I'm going to win this race and I feel like I'm on the back foot anyways. I'm going to just commit to going to Spirit Orb because if I hit here, then I'm winning the race at that point, right? Like you're in a really good spot there, but it's very unlikely. But if it does hit, then you can be very well rewarded, even though the odds are low. The thing you definitely don't want to do is not use library cards. If you're walking this distance with a library card and stuff, you're just losing minutes to your competitors. And you have to double dip going through the library, like we said. Like it's bad news, right? So don't do that. Do one of these two. I think that there's merit for both of them. I think there's less merit for Carter than Spirit Orb. Okay, so let's continue along. So enemy diversity is really important in this, right? Like, because, you know, we're getting Vlads from enemies, knowing which areas have the most enemies can help us with routing and making some decisions. I've got some stats over here, but the biggest thing you could probably use is I have these stats because I literally mapped every enemy out on a spreadsheet because of course I did, and here is a copy of it. It's actually on my my random weapons spreadsheet, which it's my dumping ground for a lot of things here. You can see that I got heat mapped and all that stuff. In particular, like the first castle has 51% chance that it's or 51% of the unique enemies are located in the first castle, and only 33% of them are located in the second. And it's got all sorts of good stuff here. So check it out. The link's in the description. And I'm going to put this away for a second, and let's see how we can utilize this to make some good decisions here. So with understanding the density, I think that like some folks have been experimenting, and for good reason, with after fighting bees to get the entrance teleporter because you get excellent map coverage from there, right? The only problem is that that area of the castle isn't very dense from an enemy diversity perspective. There are a few unique enemies there, but the odds aren't that great. So I don't think it's worth the extra time to go there. I think it's not really worth it, and you're kind of gambling. But it could work, right? Like if you do get it, you're fine. If you don't get it and there is a unique enemy you need to get from there, I personally just go from the reverse caverns. Like there's a warp there in the reverse mines. You're not that far away from the reverse entrance from there. So especially if you have like any degree of fast movement, it's a bit dangerous with like the bomb knights and stuff, but they're pretty much pushovers. And I think if you go from the mines, I don't think you have to deal with any of the blue Venus weeds anymore. So it's a very cool place to get there and avoid being punished. The other thing I think that's really important is clearing the second castle, even if it's just for cards, is beneficial. Because there's so many unique enemies in the first castle, if you dip to second castle and you get a relic and then you dip back to first, if you don't have a lot of cards yet, there's a good chance that like one other card is in the second castle. So you're going to go back to second castle anyways, just to go back to first castle again. You're going to be really burning through library cards that way, and then you're just using time transitioning from different areas. So I think it could be very beneficial, especially when you look at these complexity charts over here. So the one on the left is for like the most linear possible, which is exceptionally unlikely. If you get this, like the odds are better you'll win the lottery, right? And I mean like the Powerball lottery. It's probably in like the hundreds of millions or something like that. And then the more likely scenario where like you're either at or close to the minimum. So if you haven't watched my video yet on complexity and confidence counts and stuff, this won't make a lot of sense. Go and watch that. But like the confidence count here at the minimum is like, what is this here? This is like 7, right? Like there's a huge amount of opportunity for bait. So like even going to the second castle and like getting something useful, there could be more there, right? So I'd really recommend staying longer in the second castle to both get these relics here, because the second castle is the most likely place to have more than one progression item. And again, the complexity video will cover that more in more detail. And you have more opportunities to get cards. And then when you do go back to the first castle, if that's the case, then you'll be doing so with more knowledge and being able to route that out a lot better. So I think that's very important. The Lastly, I think that every teleporter you pass by, you got to grab, because you can use that to farm enemies, of course, and most people will know that. But the thing that I think tripped up a lot of people is the first castle mines. So like put yourself in the mind of someone running, right? You've just beat the Cerberus. You're going down. You grab the demon card check. You get something there, and you say to yourself, okay, I'm gonna check Spike Breaker, and I'm going to library card out of there. And then you go straight down, and you forget to grab the Mines Warp completely. There's not a huge amount of diversity down in the mines, but or the catacombs. But you could also go to the caverns from there, where there is more diversity. It's a very good teleporter to use for your farms. So you got to make sure you grab that. Take the extra 10 seconds and make sure it's in your mind that you need to grab it, all right? Because it's very easy to forget about it. Okay, so the other thing we need to keep in mind, or what we can really use to our advantage, is that there is no rule against making multiple saves in the same run. So when you go to save, and the first question is like, do you want to overwrite your save? And you're allowed to hit no, and then you can still save afterwards and have multiple saves on the go. There's two scenarios I want to look at this for. The first is that you've got 4 Vlad relics, and you've got kind of all the other progression you need, at least in terms of movement, and you're already like set up for success in the second castle. Like you've got a teleporter to get to Drac and all that kind of stuff, right? At that point, you want to start making alternate saves all over the place. And you don't need to overdo it, but you want to have some key areas that are going to allow you that once you get that final that card, then you can just save split it away and immediately go to an area that's close to the enemy you need to farm, which of course you won't know where that is before you get the card. So making several saves could be very beneficial. Usually what I like to do is, if I'm going to have to fill up for MP anyways, just make a full save, right? And take the extra 7 seconds, because it can save you a lot of time later. The other thing is, you want to always save before library carding anyways, whether it's going to the first castle or second reverse library. So, and like especially in the reverse library, you want MP before you library card. Like I've seen a lot of people make that mistake where you get something you need, and you're like, okay, I need to go to the second castle. I'm going to library card right away, and you have no MP. And then you're in this very, very difficult area with like Schmooze and Tin Man and all that kind of stuff, right? And if you just like took an extra 10 seconds to go and get full MP, you could just fly through it with Bad or with Wolf and make your life a lot easier. Not to mention, like, just live, right? Like, if your equipment's bad, you accidentally you library card and you don't have a save and you die, that's a problem, right? So while you're doing those or while you're going to the save rooms to at least get MP before library carding and maybe make a save, just don't overwrite your previous saves if you've already got something you can use, and you can really take advantage of that once you get the card, you get the information, and you'll have so many saves through the castle, you'll be able to quickly get the last flat, and then win the game, hopefully. Okay. The other thing is, for any Vlads that you're kind of gambling away anyways, all right? So we all know the deal, right? Nobody likes Grand Falloon, right? Nobody likes Grand Falloon. So you bet that, okay, Grand Falloon has no progression, so you skip it. But for some reason, you're also doing Spike Breaker, for like a good reason, right? I think making a save right at the beginning of the mines is very, very good. Because if you, let's say you clear the rest of the first castle, you go to the second castle, and you don't find the last card, you're like, oh crap, I know it's at Grand Falloon. Save your game, like don't overwrite the save though. Load up your previous save, even though it doesn't have like any progression or anything like that. Go and kill Grand Falloon, you get the card, get the information, and then go back to your save that has all your Vlads and stuff already. You could really save yourself a ton of time. Rather than saying, okay, now I got a library card, now I got to warp, now I got to get all the way over here, I got to get this, and then I need to get to the area I need to go to. Like, don't bother with all that, right? Like, just load up this save, get the information, and then act accordingly from there. It might burn you if the enemy you have to farm is like right here in the mines anyways, and you're like, oh shit, I wish I just really did library card over there. But the odds aren't huge, right? So I think it's a viable strategy, and it lets you feel a bit safer about your gambles, or leaving like or orphaning like checks behind, especially if you don't need it for progression. Okay, so let's talk about relics, all right? So there are absolutely winners and losers in this preset. So the biggest winner, I feel, is Spikebreaker, right? Spikebreaker is huge. So other than just getting through spikes, you get 10 more defense than Alucard, right? And of course, like a few iFrame items, we're going to talk about those later, but like obviously because through spikes, it's its main job. But having an extra 10 defense is huge, right? The biggest deal breaker in this preset is that you die, right? And because there's not a lot of items, you're going to get very few things that grant you iframes to get out of bad situations. You're not going to have a lot of armor. You're not going to have potions. You're not going to have any food, right? Like you're almost hard guaranteed to not have any food, if I understand correctly. So Spikebreaker is actually huge. You need to pay attention when you've got Spikebreaker and put it on liberally, especially if you're not using the rest of the yellow card stuff. Like, just get it on there and save yourself from dying. The J is very powerful, especially because you may need to do some underwater farms. So there's no situation where you should never pick up the J. You should always grab it. And Gas Cloud and Force of Echo are really interesting here because you could theoretically use them for farms, especially Gas Cloud. I haven't personally used Force of Echo yet, but I could see a case for it, so you might want to go for it. Certainly, even if it doesn't provide a ton of utility, it's certainly better than in the normal game where like it doesn't do a ton of damage, the range doesn't matter and all that kind of stuff, right? So when we look at the losers though, Cube of Zoe is the biggest loser by far, right? So I believe this is for some sort of technical reason. They had to program it this way, but all of the candles just drop small hearts, with a couple exceptions. But it's like small hearts and grabbing cube aren't really worth it. It could be if you happen to get a sub weapon drop off of the Axe Knights, which is typically the only way you're going to get a sub weapon. And I think sub weapons are really good. Like knives, the gun, right? Anything that gives you range is fantastic. So if you end up getting like a random knife drop off of the Axe Knights, then getting cube for small hearts just along the way, I think is totally worth it. Even if you just get them by mistake, obviously the hearts are still in the common drop pool, but it's you could justify it there. The other thing too, as you can see us at the bottom, is that this one particular candle here drops an axe for some reason. There's other ones that drop like money bags and like one that drops like a big heart, I think. But the one in the middle here, so the fourth candle, in the room, then you know it's the right one because it doesn't have the drapery here. The drapery's in the further room to the side with the red drapes. This will drop an axe if you have a Cube of Zoe, and I think that is useful, right? Like you could use it against flea riders, for instance, or potentially other enemies when you walk in the room and they're above you. Because there's a guaranteed Varda, like they'll slap and even for something like if you do fight Grand Falloon or a Beelzebub, it's really good as well. So it could be useful. So you could justify grabbing Cube if you haven't gone back through entrance yet. Otherwise, you can probably just skip it. It's a shame because sub weapons would be very, very powerful in this preset if you could get them consistently. The other surprise loser is Fairy Scroll. So let me describe, because you may be thinking, well, Dinner Dog, why don't I want Fairy Scroll? It tells me the name of the enemies, right? And you would be correct. But you will lose an advantage by having Fairy Scroll on. And that advantage is that when you hit an enemy, it overwrites the message that tells you when you pick up an item. So if you remember from my item randomization videos, there's a lot of value you can get from knowing what is in your inventory right away, right? And not having to search for things or question them, right? So if I get a really cool drop off of an enemy, but then the enemy's name flashes by and I don't see the item, I might not use it or get the value from it, right? And like that could, have a ripple effect through your run where, like, let's say, I don't know, you get like a Fist of Tulkas, which the special would be fantastic for doing farms for, right? You can just do the Hadouken and you can get a huge amount of range, right? Despite just like fighting bosses and such. But if I didn't see it because I was like, I don't know, wing smashing through a bunch of enemies and like their name came up instead, then I'm losing out on value. And because items are so restricted in this preset because they're not lying around or for purchase, you need to know what's in your inventory and get the most out of it. So honestly, the first time you go and check your relics for cards and enemy locations, I turn off fairy scroll. I think it's actually like, I know why it's here, and it's good that you start with it, especially for more casual players. But once you get used to the enemies and stuff like that, you need to turn this bad boy off so you can understand what items you have in your inventory. And then for caution, I think fairy card you need to have a bit of caution with, just because like it's super good, especially in this preset that can be potentially really dangerous with enemies and such. That like she can bring you back with the life apple. I almost never in a regular randomizer use the fairy card, but I do in Bounty Hunter, especially if I do have a life apple. But the problem is if you happen to have an anti-venom, right? Like a precious iFrame item that you're not going to get a lot of, and the fairy uses it on you for some reason, that's going to feel real bad, right? So you got to be a bit careful with the fairy card. The sword card could be really good too. So there is some tech with sword card. So what happens is that sword card, when it starts attacking, it will keep attacking in the same location even when you leave the room. All right, it maintains its position, and obviously it can't kill things when you leave the room. But if you're farming, what you can do is if it's an enemy that the sword bro is going to kill, especially if you have Vardon, then you can watch for the first tick of damage, leave the room, come back in. The next tick of damage will hit, and then do that a couple of times, and you'll get a few quick kills with the sword card. So the sword card can actually be really good for your farms, depending on the enemy that you're farming. The bad news about sword card, though, is it lags a lot, all right? Like, it's really, really, really slow in some places, especially, like, if you're, like, I don't know, you're wing smashing in the anti-chapel, getting to bees, and you end up not doing the lagless. You're going to get a ton of lag with sword card. It's going to be brutal. So I think sword card can be useful, but the way you want to use sword card is you only really want to turn it on if you've already defeated all the bosses. And the reason I say that is because those bosses are, with their death animations and stuff, cause a ton of lag. And the sword card doesn't really provide a lot of value for you in those fights anyways. Like if you've got the equipment to make sword card really good, then your equipment should take you through anyways. You don't need it. And the last thing to caution on is Spirit Orb. So having Spirit Orb is actually really good. Like, you can really get a good sense, like, if, I'm like Guardians. Guardians are strong to cut, right? But they're normal to hit. So if you're fighting them with a sword, you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back, right? Because they're going to take half damage on top of their really, really impressive defense. And so Spirit Orb can be really good. The only caution I'd say is that there is a bug in the game where if you have Spirit Orb on and you kill a Rock Knight in a certain way, the game will crash. So you need to be cognizant of that. I think there's some info in the long library about it, or I'll try to post it in the comments. But the only way to avoid that with the Rock Knights is, especially if you're going from right to left towards towards the towards the dot 40 fight, for instance. Like, that's the hallway where I think it can happen. I think you need to be going right to left. You need to make sure to turn this bad boy off. So exercise caution here. Okay, no iframe spike breaker. So the checking the spike breaker with no iframe items is really important because you probably won't get them. They're really, really, really scarce potentially. So it's been known for a while that you can take a hit from the spikes and do a spell while Alucard's recovering. And use the iframes from that spell to get through. Razio does a demonstration of that, and he recently did this video, so I'll leave it to him. We'll probably do a more in-depth video on this later, because he does it with Summon Spirit. You can do it with Hellfire as well. You could even avoid getting hit by doing it with Hellfire from the little gap in the spikes after the second gap in the spikes after the Mist Gate. But I'm going to link Razio's video in the description. If you haven't seen this before, you absolutely need to, and you need to consider putting this into your arsenal. It looks really intimidating, but after a bit of practice, it's not too bad. I think you could get it in like 5 minutes or so. Okay, so lastly, let's talk about equipment and game state, right? So don't die, all right? Just live, right? Like live. The like dying, I think, is your greatest enemy because your starting defense is terrible with the Alucard. You do get the cloak that gives you some good defense, but the that's going to lose its luster over time, especially like when you get bone. It's also going to give you a bunch of constitution, and you get diminishing returns from constitution itself. So you need to live, right? And you got to pay attention, like your armor. You got to make sure you're doing that. That's why I was saying Spike Breaker is really important because it's a very decent set of armor. The and save when you're under threat. The you can pause and try to find an answer, and something that I absolutely recommend. The only problem is that you won't be able to reach as far into that bag as you would normally because you're going to naturally have fewer items. So you really got to be more proactive about living, and in particular, we're going to areas that we don't normally go to. There's a lot of really difficult enemies. And a lot of them are away from save rooms, right? Like if you're, I don't know, if you have to farm the Ouroboros, right? There's not really a reliable save room you can get to, especially if you don't have like Bat or Sun to get to the closest one. And you could end up dying very quickly. So you need to really understand, what is my equipment going to do for me here? How much danger am I in right now, and do I need to save just in case, right? Because I'm fighting enemies I'm not used to fighting. I'm in areas that are in a bit of a desert in terms of save rooms to quickly gain more stuff, and I don't have any, or I probably don't have items to refill my health, right? So you need to be really, really, really cautious. And because of that, you really shouldn't be married to the Alucard equipment. I think Alucard is great. The 20 extra luck does increase your percentages, but if you've seen the video, the last video I did on I probably should have had it here, but like the last video on Bounty Hunter, just like what it's all about, it doesn't raise it that much. So it's usually much better just to be able to kill enemies faster, or to live, right? So putting on better armor is usually a good idea. I only really use Alucard if my game state's fantastic. I'm going to be one hitting enemies anyways. So yeah, that's that. Weapon specials with range for farming are particularly good use. So like don't sleep on like your Osafunes and other weapons. Even like weapons that don't have a special but hit really fast can be useful for enemies that have a ton of defense. Just to wear them down faster, because you'll always do 1 damage, like with like tombstones or even like the iron ball, and of course things like knives and such have a higher crit chance, and your luck is really high anyway, so you're in a good place. So yeah, weapon specials and range for farming can be really good. On the same beat, spells can often be way better than weapons. For a couple of reasons. Some enemies are resistant to cut. Sometimes you can hit multiple enemies at the same time with like a soul steal, or even to a lesser degree the Tetra Spirit. A lot of enemies have like guard states, like the Saloms or the Guardians, and if you stay out of their AI range and just hit them from afar, they won't activate their shields, and it can be really, really, really useful. So make sure you put spells in your toolkit, and then of course if you're dealing with spells, you can at that point you can put Alucard on, because you're not really worried about getting hit for the most case. Lastly, for the stuff about game state, and I think it's the most important, is you cannot tilt, right? Do not get angry at yourself. Do not allow that to get in your way. You are going to make mistakes. We haven't played a lot of this preset before. There's a lot of routing decisions you're going to come across that you haven't before, even if you've played this game for years, right? There's a lot of enemies you're going to be fighting that you've never had to fight before, and the biggest thing you're fighting is the slot machine, right? Which you can't control. Don't let it get to you, right? I gotta do a video about like rando brain or tilting, but yeah, like do not tilt. Do anything you can to avoid it. And the biggest thing is, if you lose and it goes horribly, just tell yourself you're gonna get them next time, right? Especially like don't don't get so like hung up on like, oh, I had a bad farm and I lost because of this. This is garbage and blah blah blah, right? Like that will not help you, right? Pessimism is your enemy, right? You're just gonna let it get under your skin. You're gonna think about it all the time. It's gonna impact your performance, and it's gonna snowball into other races, right? Always start with a blank slate and believe in yourself, okay? Don't get pessimistic, and mainly just focus on what you can control, right? You can't control the drop rates, but you can control how you farm enemies, right? You can control your route and you can learn from it, right? You can improve execution, you can improve game state thinking, right? All those things are really good. If you need help, like you've probably seen on this channel, I do a bunch of like race reviews for folks. And whether you're a vet or you're just starting, I'd be happy to do it for you. Whether you had a bad race or you have an example of a really good race, and then we can put that together. Okay, but that's it for now. So bounty hunter, people have been talking about how like you don't really need to practice for it, and it's kind of like other presets and all that stuff, and there's a lot of luck based to it. But I think there is a lot of nuance to this preset that can eke you out wins, as we've seen in this video. If you're aware of them, you keep them top of mind, and you do practice them, so you can deploy them appropriately when the moment comes. So hopefully that helps. Again, like this video, and I'll do all 104 enemy spawns. More importantly, as I learn more about the preset, and as you're watching this and you've got those strategies and stuff, put them in the comments. I'll pin the best ones, and I think what I'll also do, because there could be a bunch, is I'll start giving like the love symbol or whatever, like I can do as the creator of the video, to be kind of like my seal of approval, to be like, yeah, I think this strategy makes sense. So as you go through the comments, you can use that to help be your guide. Anyways, that's all for this one. Hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one and through all these tournament races. Cheers, eh? Take care.